I would now like to introduce a duo that really needs no introduction. Dr. Valerie Steele, the Director and Chief Curator of the Museum at FIT, is going to be in conversation with the one and only Tim Gunn. So please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Valerie and I do this often, but not on this topic.
Yes.
This is a first for us.
This is a first, but we have done lots of conversations.
Yes.
So I wanted to start with this historic image at before and after the corset, because it reminded me of an issue which is very much alive today. At this time, a French 19th century doctor said, quote, "A woman in a corset is a lie, but we prefer the lie to the truth." And they give examples, you know, this one at the bottom, too skinny, as they say underneath, no breasts, no hips, no nothing. So you give her a padded corset and she becomes something. Others, too plump, the waist is too short. You know, there's the one in the center, they say, oh, she's magnificent, but unfortunately her breasts are starting to fall, so this harness will make them acceptable. Similarly, with this one, different kinds of women and girls are associated with different corsets. And the one in the center doesn't wear a corset. She just wears a silk knitted undershirt. And it said, to do without a corset is best, but it's so rare that you can do that. Most people's bodies are just too flawed to get away with that. The ideal at this point in the late 19th century was a very voluptuous figure, but with a small waist. It really was, though, a big figure. So, for example, one famous 19th century pornographic autobiography stated, "No man will stay long with a woman whose skinny buttocks he can hold in the palm of one hand." He wants a big, big bottom, but a small waist, or at least a small waist compared to the hips, what anthropologists call a waist-hip differential. By the beginning of the 20th century, even as people are still moving very gradually from this voluptuous Venus ideal to a slimmer and more athletic Diana ideal, people start to say that they don't need to wear a corset. That's what this actress says. They ask, who's your favorite corseteer? She said, I don't need to wear a corset. You look at the photo and you go, babe, you are wearing a corset. But yes. It's already starting to seem that only if you're old or fat should you have to wear a corset. You should otherwise have a perfect body, whether through diet, exercise, or genetics. As time goes on and we move further into the 20th century, the ideal becomes increasingly slim, and then increasingly slim and athletic. For brief moments, you have little bits of body diversity in as much as you start to have women of color appearing in fashion shows and as fashion models. But these things seem to come and go in waves, and increasingly the overall tendency has moved further and further so that if you go to fashion shows today, it's almost all very young, skinny white girls, almost exclusively on the runway. So, even when you have the idea of a more curvy body, you still have this idea that somehow waist training is still an option. So they tout these waist trainers, which are sort of modernized corsets, which claim that if you wear them while you're exercising, they will magically melt all the fat away, and it will go away permanently. Whereas, of course, just like a whalebone corset, you can move the fat around, but you take the corset off and it goes back where it was. So, our conversation today is going to be about how do you deal with sort of centuries of attitudes that women's bodies are not good enough, that it's rare that you have someone who is okay the way they are. And how do we respond to that in a way that has an impact on the industry and on our own psyches and our friends around us?
Well, and I want to add one dimension to this, Valerie, which is so much of this also has to do with perceptions of sexuality.
Of course.
Yes, and that pulls at many different heartstrings and conjures up just additional dimensions of body image and how we perceive ourselves and how others perceive us. And it's, the good news is, and we're certainly not going to turn this whole topic around in a swift amount of time, but the good news is we're talking.
Yes.
I mean, at least this is now out in the open, and it's in people's vocabularies, and the conversation has started, and I don't believe for a moment that it's going to halt. I don't think it's going to go away, like that issue of Vogue from the 1980s. And admittedly, it's very, very complicated. And I won't say that it's limited to a single gender. It's true for men as well. I had an experience at Saks Fifth Avenue. This goes back about 7 years. I wanted to buy a Burberry tuxedo.
Yes.
And the sales associate, someone I had worked with for a long time, and he knew me and I knew him, and he said to me, I won't bring it to you. I said, what do you mean? He said, you don't want it. I said, no, let me just try it on. I mean, admittedly, it was expensive, but I thought, let me see what it feels like. So we had this tug of war over this tuxedo, and eventually I won. And I realized quickly why the sales associate didn't want me to experience it. I could not get the pant leg over my calf. I thought, what is this for a 15-year-old with an eating disorder? I mean, truly, it was very demoralizing. And I asked him, how many of these do you even have in stock? Who can possibly buy these? He said, a 15-year-old with an eating disorder.
Yep.
So it's a very peculiar world that we live in so many different ways. But in particular in this way, because as we heard from Emma, I mean, so much of this has to do with how we perceive ourselves.
Yes.
And I'm always talking about the semiotics of clothes. The clothes we wear send a message about how the world perceives us. And we need to be responsible for that. And the more choices we have, the more options we have, the more we can control that. And there are women and men, but there are certainly women in a size category who have so few options available to them that they may not be projecting exactly who they are, how they'd like to be perceived. And in these times of I'd like to say, inclusivity, that depends hugely upon where you are, both geographically and financially and politically in many, many ways. But I'd like to think that all women have the same number of options, that there is an equality in that, and that people aren't discriminated against. But we know that's not the case.
Yes, I mean, this would be the ideal. This example of a dress that Christian Siriano made for an actress who couldn't find anyone who was willing to make her a red carpet gown.
Horrifying.
Which is horrifying. And of course, most of us don't have the occasion to wear a red carpet gown, but many, many people, when they find out I'm in the fashion world, come to me and say, I can't find anything in my size, or because I have really big breasts. Well, what brand can I find? Is there anybody? And there have been really relatively few designers who have even been willing to experiment with making larger sizes. This is from an image from Sophie Teole, whose runways have always been very diverse in terms of race, body type, age. But that's quite uncommon. There are many, many designers who, whether because of prejudice or because it's too complicated, it's difficult to size up beyond a certain point, it's more expensive, are not willing to do it.
Well, that is true. When I left Parsons, I was at Parsons for 24 years. I never intended to leave, but I ended up going into the private sector. I was at Liz Claiborne, Inc. when it had 48 brands, incredibly diverse. And I spent a lot of time on the road doing fashion shows in malls and various places, and I loved it. And what I loved about it was interacting with the people who would attend. And I heard repeatedly from women who were larger than a size 12, this industry doesn't address me. This industry doesn't care about me. And I said, I'm taking your words back to the headquarters. And I met with the head designers across the brands who said to me, with the exception of the Liz Claiborne brand, who said to me universally, I'm not interested in her.
Yes.
What do you mean? I don't want her wearing my clothes.
That's right. That's what they say, because it's like a contamination effect.
Yes.
If it's not someone who has the body they think is beautiful and sexy, they don't want them associated with their brand. And one designer, who shall remain nameless, a model came in who was maybe a size 12, and he said, I don't dress furniture.
Oh my God. Oh, I don't even have a response to that kind of outrage.
Yeah.
That's, and I have to say, my retort to these designers saying I'm not interested in her, look at the opera divas. How fabulous are they? I'm not talking about what they're wearing on
Yeah.
the stage, what they're wearing when they're going to the grocery store.
Yes.
Fabulous. And they're not diminutive women.
Exactly. And I would be willing to bet that many opera divas have the same problem, except that they maybe can find a dressmaker who will custom make
Exactly.
it for them. Because most opera singers work very, very hard and don't make a lot of money.
Exactly.
And I've seen many, many musicians and singers who clearly have what you might call loving hands at home clothes on stage that they've made themselves for recitals, or their mother has made. So I know part of the issue is if you can make clothes yourself, you can make it perfectly to fit you. Otherwise, though, I'm hoping that through the internet it will be easier to at least find those brands that are more enlightened, which will create a variety of things in a variety of sizes that are not just either super cheap or super expensive.
Exactly. And I say to women, men, regardless of size, shape, age, the key to getting our fashion right has to do with 3 elements. And they are silhouette, proportion, and fit. And when they're in harmony and balance, you'll look great in anything. It's not about a particular item. It's not about 10 essentials that should be in your wardrobe. It's about silhouette, proportion, and fit. And too many women, and God knows too many men, and most of them are in Capitol Hill, they wear
Ill-fitting suits.
yeah, they wear clothes that are too big for them.
Yeah.
And I'm always saying the more volume your clothes have, the more volume you appear to have.
Yeah.
So fit is so critical in this, and I'll repeat, regardless of size.
Yeah. Well, that really is crucial, and that's something where you can easily find someone in a dry cleaner or a seamstress near you who can make the clothes fit.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In fact, probably there's hardly anything that you buy that you don't need to take in and have someone fit, no matter what size you are.
Precisely. Everyone benefits from having alterations. It's very, very true. This is your conversation, but if I may lead with something,
Please.
I had a sort of epiphany this past summer when we were taping season 16 of Project Runway. We had, if any of you saw last season's show, thank you. We had models who ranged in size from 2 to 22.
Yes.
And our first runway show, episode 1, I was backstage with the models, and it was very emotional. And I asked them, what's responsible for all this? And they said, we've never been together. I said, what do you mean? They said, we're always marginalized. The skinny models are in that show, we plus models are in this show, and to be coexisting here and being on the runway together is such an extraordinary moment for us. And I also used the opportunity of last season to ask the plus-size models, ladies, can we do something about this term? Because for me, I have found plus-size to be rather pejorative.
Yeah.
But you know, I have to tell you something. I had this huge wake-up call. The larger models said to me, we like the term. We want to change how the world perceives the term. And I was fascinated by that, fascinated. They said, it's accurate. We're plus sizes. And we stand by it.
Interesting.
It was interesting. I was
Yes.
very disarmed.
Well, this, of course, comes so often what their plus sizes in terms of what the sizing is in the industry.
Well, and of course, we also know it's the lying, deceptive shell game of vanity sizing.
That's right, exactly.
You know, when I was at Parsons, I took over as chair of the fashion program in 2000, and we had these old, decrepit dress forms, and I thought we need to get some new equipment in here. And by 2002, I was successful. And the size 8 dress forms arrived. Generally speaking, we use 6 and 8s.
Yes.
And I thought, these dress forms look much larger than what we've had hanging around here since the 1970s and 80s.
They were old ones.
The older dress
I
forms.
see.
There was a 3-inch difference in the size of the waist of the 2002 size 8 dress form compared to 1981.
Yeah.
And it was a demonstration of the lying, deceptive shell game of vanity sizing. For retailers, they don't want women to walk in and say, well, I've always been an 8, and now suddenly I'm a 10 or I'm a 12, and I'm not going to buy this dress, I'm going to go home and dye it.
Well, yes, and it's a pattern because people go, well, but Marilyn Monroe was a size 14. Size 14 then was more like what a size 8 would have been.
Exactly.
And now what the size 8 would have been is now being called a size 6 or something
Yes.
because people want it to seem smaller.
Yes, and that's a whole other dimension to this conversation that is filled with, I'll just say it, conspiracy against women who are larger.
Well, it's starting to shift to menswear, too. Men's at least used to always be the waist is 32 inches, whatever the length of the leg. Now they have a sizing for those, which is very confusing and deceptive.
I'll vouch for that. It's very confusing, which is why I find it's difficult to shop online unless it's a brand that you know very well, because how do you know what size you actually are?
You have no idea.
You have no idea.
You have no idea. It could be anywhere within a range of 10 sizes, depending on which
Exactly.
brand it is. What I would like to do, because I know your audience, Tim, and I know that they are going to have questions they want to ask you, and not just in the last 2 minutes. So what I'd like would be, if we can raise the lights a little bit, I want to throw it open to questions for Tim.
Wonderful. Can I add one other
Yes.
anecdote just having to do with diversity in general?
Yes.
This anecdote comes from Michael Volbrocht,
Yes.
whom you know. When Michael took over the Bill Blass line, he said, you know, this customer is a more mature woman. She's not a 14-year-old size 00 individual. I'm going to use real mature women for the fashion show. And he said he was so over the top ecstatic the morning of that show, just about how he was breaking norms and being a leader. And he said the result was devastating. He said the press hated it, the buyers hated it, and all of the mature women sitting in the front row hated it. That's not what they wanted to see.
Right.
And I found that deeply disturbing. It was also, 12 years ago. Perhaps today it would be different, but it was a wake-up call in a way.
Now, I think it goes back to that idea of stigmatization, contamination. If the brand is associated with older women, even older women don't want to be associated with that brand.
Which I just find
What they
befuddling.
would not mind would be if they mixed in some older women
Yeah.
in it, but to have it associated with a particular group like that is really a serious problem.
It is. Agreed.
Let's have a light on. And Tanya, I know we're going to have to get a sense of, what would you say? Do we have another 5 minutes for questions?
Is this Tanya? Hi. We
Okay.
haven't met.
Okay, so guys, there's 2 microphones here. If you can walk down, we'll have time for just a few questions.
Don't be shy.
Hey.
Let's start here.
Hello. First of all,
Hi.
thank you for doing this. This is just amazingly fabulous because moving from what used to be a plus-size chunky to now a mature mismorphed thing that I feel like I've become. This is just, it's fascinating covering the whole.
We're all real things. We are what we are.
Exactly, yeah. So thank you so much. So having worked with a lot of the folks here in New York in the fashion industry, what's really kind of perplexing for me as we address the issue of embracing this as an idea is what's down the road in terms of the clash of the economics of this and fast fashion.
Well, I mean, I just want to say, what I find so perplexing about this entire issue is where are the retailers? I mean, there's only money to be made, and if I were a retailer and I had my stock of designers who are all over my various floors, I would say to them, you must address this woman or you can't be in this store. I don't understand why they don't use their muscle.
Yeah, it's very perplexing. It does involve some additional effort and cost to get the sizing up so it still fits the body types, because everybody's body is different. And you can't just size. I've talked to a lot of designers.
Oh, no, you can't
cannot
just size up. You
it
have to reconceive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, it seems so much worth it, if only from the greed point of view, that you could sell so many more. I think that they're more willing to do it with very inexpensive and very expensive. As in everything else in fashion, the middle is being squeezed out.
It feels like everybody's doing so hard, one little tiny segment, and there's this huge other segment.
That they're not competing.
It's just, it betrays rational thought. I know. And also, I have been with many women who were larger than a size 12 shopping, and it's horribly demoralizing. I mean, you go with your friend who's a size 8, and you can't even shop with her. You have to go either way upstairs to the attic or downstairs to the basement behind the pots and pans, and you feel totally marginalized. You see these clothes that are filled with ruffles and pleats and ruching, and you think, I'm not a 6-month-old
dancer,
or a flamenco dancer. Yeah, where are the? Does this come with castanets?
Question here.
Hi. First, thank you again so much for speaking today. I really loved your points, especially as a plus-size person. It's really great to hear people advocating for us. But one thing I want to say is, one issue I've always found with plus-size fashion is it's not fashionable.
Yes, they're clothes.
These designers are saying, oh, we have extended sizes, how great. But then it's stuff that has no shape, stuff that has prints all over it, stuff with horizontal stripes, which never looks good on anyone that's more than a size 0. So what I find is, when is fashion, it's great that they're having the epiphany of, oh, we need extended clothes, oh, we need to be more size inclusive, but when are they going to realize that plus-size women also want to be fashionable?
Absolutely.
That we want the trendy clothes, that we want the silhouettes that fit our body. Because I'm 21 years old. I don't want to be wearing pleats and ruching and ruffles. I want stuff that makes me feel young and look young and not be stuck behind something with no shape.
Well, the world needs more Christian Sirianos. Designers, the thing that's so special about Christian is he loves you. And he wants you to look great. It's not a matter of, oh, I've got a design for her. He loves you.
I agree. Like, that was one of the things, especially this past Fashion Week, seeing models like Ashley Graham who were up there who were wearing body-hugging stuff, and she is considered plus size. And that, at least for me, who is living in an age when there's a competition between people who want to be body positive and people who want to keep fashion the same, that's really great to see. But why is it like great that it's something to be celebrated, but shouldn't other designers also now be seeing that, you know what, this is the way that the fashion world is going? Why can't they see that?
We are starting to see a few more. I mean, Prabal couldn't come in today. He was going to speak this afternoon. He couldn't come, but he's made a point. I mentioned Sophie Teale. Long ago, Isabel Toledo's been doing this. It's still, you're counting them, but you are starting to get a few more. Let's get a question here.
Thank you very much. Hi.
Hi, I actually just graduated from FIT in May. I did the 1-year program, and I wanted to add to that, a lot of people put a lot of pressure on the designers to be creating plus-size garments, but the problem that I had is I did the very fast track here at FIT. There was not a single class, not a single point where I got to learn anything about how to grade up to a plus size, how to drape for a plus size, how to pattern for a plus size. As far as I found, I believe there are 2 classes in all of fashion design here. I know Parsons has more. Some of the other schools, because they have different, they just teach differently, have different things like that. So the frustration that I have had is people are like, well, the designers aren't doing this. The designers aren't doing this. They have to physically go out and find their own education in order to design for plus-size women. And I've even talked to other designers, and I ask, what are your resources? What kind of resources? Do you have a book that you can reference as far as creating stuff for plus sizes? I am plus size, but I'm what they call an in-betweenie, because I'm a 14, so I can shop in both straight sizes and regular sizes, and pretty much nobody has anything that fits me at all. So my question for you is, what kind of advice would you give to up-and-coming designers other than just trying to get out there and demand? I mean, I've been the person that's been trying to demand the plus-size education, but I'm finding that maybe I need to create some of my own. But what kind of advice would you have for an up-and-coming designer looking to get into the plus-size, reach and finding barriers like that?
Well, I would intern with a designer who is working.
I interned with Chromat during the summer.
Oh, all right. Excellent.
So, and I know for a fact that they have been trying to do that for years and years, and it's also the buyers that are not buying the
that's
amazing
what's
sizes.
just horribly perplexing. I
So,
have yet to wrap my brain around any of that.
Do you know of any other resources other than interning?
Well,
There must be something online, but I'm sure you've looked.
I
And
have.
if maybe it's time to start figuring out if you can get somebody who can do something, especially now online.
and quite frankly, why don't you lead it?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Take a leadership role.
Thank you very much. I feel like I have to ask everybody just in case somebody has some information I don't know.
Lead and best wishes.
Thank you.
We just have time for one more because we have lots of other speakers. So this is the last question. Maybe you can try and grab Tim afterwards at the break.
So I'm not a plus-size model, but I belong to a segment of the population called middle-aged to senior. And and I am now a senior. I opened a shop gearing and focusing on middle-aged women and older who have a fashion sense. We are not dead. We want to be trendy. We deserve to be trendy and sexy and cool, but age-appropriate. And that was what my shop was geared to and still is. So my question is, we are a forgotten group of women and men who have disposable income still, and I hope it continues.
Yes, we do.
And so I put it to designers and those that can influence the designers. We have issues also as we get older. I design shoes. Our feet have issues as we get older. And I believe that there's a need and a focus that designers need to have on that segment or my segment of the world. And it's really hard to find. We're not all 6 foot, weighing 100 pounds and can wear our skirts up to here, or men, the pants really, really tight. So where do we go? It makes my job really, really difficult to find merchandise for my customers. I want them to look a certain way. They deserve to. They don't need to wear tents and cover everything up. So it's not so much a question as a statement. Designers, get out there, look. Again, we're not dead. We want to dress well.
Well, and I just want to add on this topic. Whenever I'm doing red carpet coverage, reportage, I'm much more interested in women who've had experience in the world and have been navigating it for a while. I'd rather see Helen Mirren and understand how she's presenting herself than some tween. It's just it doesn't interest me. It's about, as I said earlier, the semiotics of clothes. How do you want the world to perceive you? And the more experience we have in the world, the more power and control we should have over that.
There's no place to go to look, though. I mean, the fashion magazines are either for the very rich or for the young. So we need more influence and more teaching tools to show women and men what is appropriate for them.
Just remember silhouette, proportion, and fit. Sorry, Valerie.
And I wonder
do.
to what, some people would say maybe appropriate's not right for everyone, that some people specifically want to be inappropriate, to say, I don't want you to say you shouldn't wear this because you're older or because you're plus size, that for a lot of people, being body positive means saying, I'm going to wear it anyway because it feels good.
Exactly. And I will also say, it's something Emma said earlier, it's very hard to separate the garment from the person wearing it. And I have a very Socratic approach to most things, but particularly to fashion. I pummel people with questions. And I'm fond of saying that person in the middle of the room who's dressed like a circus clown, maybe they are.
Or it's comme des garçons, they're really chic. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.